Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the channel here. Today, if you're watching on YouTube or maybe you're listening on the road, we have a very special guest here. This is Alexis Schomer from Your Startup Operations. And today, we're going to talk a lot about how to hire a VA for your company, where to actually find this person, how the heck to unpack this whole VA thing, and what can you actually have them do? Why do you need this? Why is this important? But we'll get all into that. So, Alexis, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, Caleb, thanks for having me here. Excited to be on the podcast and share more about what a virtual assistant is and how they can really help small businesses.
Of course. So, just for those of people who are listening or watching, they've never heard of you before. Who are you? Can you give us a little intro on who you are and what you guys do over there?
Yeah, sure. So I'll try to keep my personal intro brief. I'm a serial entrepreneur, started multiple businesses, so I know what it's like, to start from the ground up, grassroots approach, and kind of fund everything yourself. So from healthcare technology to a marketing agency to now an operations agency, I come from many backgrounds and I've worked with many different types of businesses. So your startup operations is an ops agency that specializes in helping service-based businesses with virtual assistance and operational support. So simply put, we help founders and business owners take the admin duties off their plate.
Okay. Okay. Absolutely. So, and just to be clear, I know we talk a lot on this channel about, painting contractors, but you guys work with pretty much any service industry. Is that correct? Or is there kind of a couple specialties that you guys work with?
We are specializing in home services, so
Okay.
specifically like the painters, electricians, landscapers, plumbers, things like that.
Okay. Absolutely. So I know that most people probably already know this question, and it might be a silly question to ask, but what is a VA? Like in your description, I mean, we all hear the term, we think it's, somebody that does like your admin stuff, but like, in your words, like what exactly is a VA?
So technically virtual assistant.
Okay.
But I think to make it simple for people to understand, it's an office manager. It's a virtual office manager. So someone that's handling the administrative work, someone that typically would be doing things that they do in the office, like answering the phone, managing the calendar, sending invoices to clients, following up. Any type of office admin work, it's just now able to be done virtually because of where the world is at.
Okay. Okay. Understood. So, um, where does this person normally kind of fit in to, let's say I think a lot of our audience, and I'm going to try to steer this towards who most of our audience is. A lot of our audience is at the spot where they got a good business going, but they're still super actively involved. They're trying to put in those first steps, like getting a CRM, getting somebody to answer phones. But it's like there's this gap between they're really busy and they have work, but they don't really have like a full team. It's almost like they're super self-employed.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people can benefit from adding on technology, adding on, an office admin. That is, in my opinion, like m more important than like the actual getting leads or something yourself. Because if you don't have a good way to manage them, they're useless. But where does that kind of fit in? Like, what are some of those? What are some of those steps? How do you start that process there?
Yeah, so typically, if we're starting with a client or a business that doesn't have a CRM, that would be step one
Okay.
because you need organization in the business.
Yeah.
So we find that sometimes people are using spreadsheets, and we can also train virtual assistants on the systems that are already in place. Like if they're
Yeah.
comfortable using spreadsheets and want to stick to that for project management, that's fine. But best case scenario, we implement a CRM so that everything's organized. There's one central place.
Okay.
And it just makes the process easier for everyone involved, whether it is the admin that we're bringing on, the business owner, or
Yeah.
more people as they grow their team.
Okay.
So we see this all the time where business owners they're too busy to train someone.
Yeah.
Maybe they've even worked with a VA that didn't work because the VA like was from another country and there was no proper training or proper tools or proper onboarding. So
Mhm.
we've seen clients that have been through it before. Some of them have never worked with the VA, some of them have and had horror stories.
Yeah.
And there is a missing piece, and that is like
Yeah.
the American operational expert, someone that knows cultural norms here, someone that knows how to run a small business here, how to create processes, how to create onboarding and training. And quality assure the virtual assistant because the first 3 months of an onboarding are critical. Whether it's anyone on any new job, that initial onboarding is very important to set them up for success. So that's where we're finding is the biggest gap that we fill is speaking the same language as the business owner, like being small business owners ourselves and helping fill the gap of recruiting, hiring, training, and managing the new admin.
Okay. I feel like at least in my own life and from some of the people I talk to, we all want to just hire somebody on and then we want them to, from day one to just know everything we know exactly how it works. And I think that's, really either taking the time to create those SOPs. Like what I do right now is every time I do a task that is like somewhat uh repeatable, I'll make a Loom video where
Mhm.
I'm like, hey, this is exactly how I do X, Y, and Z. These are all the questions I normally get from clients. Like, yeah, for example, we recently hired on like an account manager who is going to be, they have their own set of clients where they're the first point of contact for them. Um, and that person, like, I filmed all these different Loom videos about like frequently asked questions for Facebook, for Google, for everything else that could be happening. Um, so I think that that step is super important, actually taking everything that's up in your head and putting it into like a standardized way to have this person on because we all want them to be great, even, but I think some of us don't know what that looks like.
Mhm.
We want somebody to be a good employee, but you don't actually train them properly. So, I guess my question is like, um, what does that training process look like? Like how do you actually train somebody? What are some of the things that you train them on? And then what do you have them kind of take on in that admin role? I mean, are they answering phone calls? Are they following up with leads? Are they ordering products? What should they be doing? What shouldn't they be doing?
Yeah, so our process is very thorough, starting with the recruitment because we need the right person to
Yep.
for the role. So we actually recruit based on each client that we get because every business needs something like slightly different. Even though we're finding a lot of common trends with admin and in-home services,
Hmm.
there are still slight differences. So let's say we're recruiting for a painting company.
Yeah.
We would actually find an admin assistant that has experience in this industry. So they already have multiple years of experience. They have virtual assistant experience, and they pass all of the like levels of interviewing and testing that we require. So we might handpick 800 people to hire one person for
Oh,
this
wow.
specific role. Yeah. So we have a and we're not like posting it on job sites and just like having hundreds of, willy-nilly candidates. We're actually handpicking them, sourcing them on LinkedIn based on their experience and their if we think it'll be a good match. So 800 down to one. And we also trial them out first. So before we even introduce them to the client, they go through a stage of, I think, 3 or 4 different interview steps. And
Okay.
then we have a trial week with our top 5 candidates, 20 hours of paid work to see how they actually work. And we give them work that will be relevant to the job they'll be doing. So after this, we usually have like our top 2 winners, and the client can either interview them both or just like have us pick our favorite. Then from there, during the recruitment period, I'm working with the business owner to really outline what the VA will be doing. So I asked the business owner to walk me through their day to day, like what systems they're using. If they have SOPs, typically they don't.
Yeah.
So it's just about showing me, and
Okay.
then I will actually write the SOPs for them. So once I have a
Okay.
clear understanding, and once again, because I like come from these industries of small businesses and I've seen this happen a lot, it's very easy for me to pick this up.
Yeah.
So I need to understand the business, understand the systems they're using, and then I actually train the virtual assistant. So I'll develop a 3-month onboarding plan of what success looks like, working also with the business owner to make sure that we're aligned on, hey, in 3 months, if your VA is doing all these things, like, is this what success looks like to you? So it's being very clear on the onboarding expectations on both sides.
Yeah.
Training the virtual assistant. We have an internal training that we train on like standard things like cybersecurity, American etiquette,
Hmm.
email management best practices, calendar management best practices. So all of the typical VA things.
Hmm.
And then the custom onboarding based on the actual company. So reading like all of the materials that they have, like sales materials, website to get familiar with that brand, the services they offer, what makes them different from the other home service businesses in the area. And then also like job specific training. So, hey, I need you to like create this estimate for a client. And so the beginning few weeks are very, very, very hands-on. I'm almost
Mhm.
QAing everything that they do. We typically probably wouldn't have them answer the phone on day one. We want them to learn the
Yeah.
business first. So we can build up to that. So if the admin does need to be answering phones, maybe by week 3 or 4, like we're having them do some phone calls, and then by the end of the onboarding, they're like fully managing the phone lines. So it's definitely in phases, and we want to give them achievable goals, and
Yeah.
then want to make sure that the business owner is not wasting any of their time on
Yeah.
admin work by the end of the onboarding period.
Yeah. And I guess speaking from my own experience here as well, like if you hire somebody on and they don't have that proper training, you are spending twice as much time to kind of follow up with them and make sure things get done right. And then you just got to go back and do it yourself anyways. So I think a lot of people may look at something like this and be like, oh, I can just do it myself. But like realistically, like especially for some of your first hires, you really need some rock stars and you need them to know what the heck is going on. Um, and then I think as time sort of goes on, you can start giving them more and more responsibilities to like almost be like your full-time, admin there. Uh, so that kind of boils into my next question here. For somebody who's like, hey, I got a lot of office work, but I don't really know what to give my VA, like what are some of the first things that you have them offload onto their VA? And, what can that look like down the line to transition that person into like a full-time in office admin?
So if someone doesn't know where to start, I have them walk me through their typical day, and I will help identify tasks that can be offloadable.
Okay.
So very simply, like the easy go-to is email management. If a business owner is the first one
Yeah.
looking at their email inbox without, someone else organizing it, that's already a red flag because there's going to be tons of spam or things that a VA can handle. There are probably questions that the business owner needs to, answer themselves, but there should be someone that's helping manage that inbox first so that you're not overwhelmed with unread emails every day. So we strive for a zero inbox policy, and that means like zero emails in your inbox. So when an email comes in, it should be, attended to, answered, sorted into folders once completed so that whatever's in the inbox is a pending to do. And then once it's completed, it's filed and sorted so that you'll feel like you have so much like clarity and calmness when your
Yeah.
email is organized.
Yeah. There was a super, super side note here. I when I first started the company a couple years ago, I rented like one of those small shared offices,
Mhm.
and somebody that was also in that office, he was an executive at a lending company, and
Mhm.
we got to talking, we became friendly, and that was actually something that he had, where he would have a VA go into his emails every single day and then sort things for him, and he said like that was a huge time saver. Just a side little caveat there, but like I would never have just thought of that. I never would have thought, oh, hey, I should have somebody sort my emails. I never would have thought that. No. But I think that's where it becomes really cool having somebody like you to identify those tasks. Because I think, like, from the bottom of my heart, I think that a lot of business owners out there, especially like these painting contractors that we work with, like, they are hard workers. There's no doubt about that. Nobody that I really work with is lazy. They work so hard. The only problem is that I think sometimes they can get frustrated because they work so hard, but it feels like they're not getting any return on just their business or they're spending so much time on it. Um, and I think it's because they work a lot on the wrong things.
Mhm.
You can work all day long in terms of time putting into your business, but are you working on the right things? And are you doing the things that an owner should be doing? Realistically, if you are making at least over like a couple 100,000 a year in revenue in your business, there's probably a ton of tasks that you should not be doing as the owner. And that is an example of one of them. You should not be sorting through spam emails, and you definitely should not be the one answering the phone. That is something that I preach to the heavens about to our clients, because obviously we generate leads. And I'll tell this story here. There was a client that, and I think we spoke about on the phone about this one. There's a client that we're running ads for, and he's we're doing Google ads, and people are calling his business. And then he was doing okay. He was closing jobs and things, but it wasn't like as much as I wanted. So I was looking into what the heck was going on. And I came to notice that like literally 50% of the leads were going straight to voicemail and they just weren't getting answered. And I was like, had to have a heart to heart with him. And I was like, dude, like This has to be fixed. Like you are at the point where you're making like $850,000 a year. You should not be answering the phone. I don't care who does it. I don't care if, you hire a VA, if you have your wife do it, if you have, you hire somebody. Something needs to be figured out here. Um, but somebody needs to answer the phone and it should not be you. So, I mean that alone, just in my head, I think, okay, if you answer one phone call and that one phone call turns into a job, that could very easily pay for like 6 months of your VA just by
Right.
the fact that like somebody's actually there to answer the phone. And if somebody's not there and that lead management, doesn't happen, they're literally just going to pick up the phone and call the next person on that list. They're probably not going to leave a voicemail. They're definitely not going to wait around. I sure wouldn't. So they're just going to call the next person. So um, I think a lot of people look at this as sort of an expense, but in my mind, it's really an investment into your business, into your operations, into kind of your own peace of mind as well. Um, Nobody wants to be that business owner that's behind bars in their own business. So.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so I'm curious, maybe just for my own, curiosity here, what are some of the other things that you can kind of have this VA do here? All right, they're managing your inbox, they're managing the phones. Like what else can they kind of do to streamline things here?
I would say invoicing is a big one. So making
Okay.
sure that invoices get sent out when the job's complete, attached with, photos of the work, following up on invoices as well. Like a lot of our clients have outstanding invoices that are unpaid, and they sometimes are too busy to follow up themselves or forget or don't have a proper system. So
Mhm.
making sure you get paid for all the jobs you do. Creating bills in QuickBooks for, vendors or things like that, like helping with some light bookkeeping to make the bookkeeper's job easier or reduce like the actual bookkeeping fees. And then if you have a team of people, like maybe you have multiple painters that are working for you, helping managing the workers' schedules and making sure that the workers leave notes or take photos of the jobs or things like that. So really like the data, helping run the day-to-day of the business as well, beyond just phone and email, worker communications, client communications, invoicing. There could also be an element of research. So maybe if you need to order more paint, order more tools, you can have the VA do all of that for you. Inventory management. So it's really like anything that an office admin would do or any behind the scenes work that the business owner shouldn't be spending time on.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And in your perspective, when do you think somebody is ready for a VA? Now, I know like probably a lot of people do it too late, but realistically, I don't think they should do it too early to where they're spending half of their revenue on a VA.
Mhm.
Where exactly do you have kind of a number or sort of like a size that maybe they should be at? Like, for example, if somebody is making 50 grand a year in revenue, they should not be hiring a VA. No way.
Right.
Um, like, is there kind of like a business size that you recommend?
Yeah, I would say starting at like a couple 100,000, definitely by 500,000, they should definitely have a VA.
Yeah.
So maybe around like the 200,000 mark is when I would probably consider it, depending on the profit margins and
Mhm.
also their time.
Yeah.
Because if someone is caught up in admin work that's preventing them from doing more revenue generating activities,
Yeah.
the ROI on hiring a VA will be almost immediate because if the VA can handle the admin work, they can do more like
Yeah.
paint jobs and get
Yeah.
out there more. So
Yeah.
it depends on a little bit on the business, but yeah, I would say
Mhm.
under 100 grand is probably too early. Like you need to have enough revenue to cover the cost of the admin. You
Yeah.
don't want to be going into debt or anything like that.
Yeah.
And then yeah, businesses over 500 grand, 100% should have an admin.
Yeah. I I agree. I think once you get past like the 300, that's where you can really start like
Yeah.
systematizing a lot of things. And I will just kind of preach on how much I think that helps. I remember when we hired our first account manager, not a VA, slightly different, but this was like a client-facing person that um answered a lot of inquiries and kind of did what I was doing, met with clients, things like that. Um, the very first time that I saw like a message come in and yeah, and somebody else responded and then I didn't have to deal with it. It was just like a huge weight lifted off my shoulder. I was like, oh wow, like I am not this massive bottleneck anymore. And it felt so good. I have a whiteboard in front of me here. I have two things written on there. I have don't be the bottleneck, and then I have use your team. I have those things on there because Even I'm still stuck in that sometimes where I'm like, oh, I'm the only one who knows how to do this, which is not the case. But I think a lot of people are stuck in that. But if you invest in your team, I think it'll invest back in you. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, Rant over on that. Anyways, moving on, I did have a question. This is a little bit more of a topic that makes people uncomfortable a little bit, but where do you find these people? Obviously, some they're not always going to be in North America, or maybe they will be sometimes in North America. When is that the case? When is that not good? When is that good? Is there, kind of a time and place? And is that actually relevant? Like, are people just racist, or is that, real? Like, um, what are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah. So I worked with people from all around the world.
Yeah.
We've tested this model in many different countries. I've worked a lot with US people, and I have personally found that some people overseas are more reliable than
Mhm.
US, especially like at an entry-level job.
Yeah.
A lot of our clients actually have had in-person office admins that are unreliable. So when you find someone, it's more about finding the person with the right work ethic.
Mhm.
And we do now have a global team. We actually do find a lot of great talent in the Philippines and in Mexico and other Latin American countries. So
Mhm.
technically, that is still North America,
Yeah.
Mexico. But I found that it's really not about the country they're from or the language, like the original language they speak. It's about how they show up today, the skill sets that they have, and their work ethic.
Yeah.
So I've found like it was actually, a culture shock to me when I first started working with the Filipino market, but I was so impressed with how just like the true work ethic that they have and how committed they are to showing up and learning and wanting to do better. So yeah, we don't really have a preference in terms of like we only source from one specific country. We open it up, but I end up finding the right fit, the people with the right experience. There's a lot of virtual assistants in the Philippines that have worked with US companies before
Yeah.
and have like excellent communication skills. Some of them even are on client calls for their clients. So
Yeah.
just depending on the role they're filling, like we look for that experience. So if it's going to be more client facing, if there's going to be a lot of calls to customers, we'll find someone that has more customer service experience. So they have that customer service voice, they're good on camera, they have that executive presence. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I've worked with people from all around the world, and to me, it's just about the person's work ethic, experience, and how they show up today.
I think one of the things that really kind of sold me at first on this whole idea was that in America, I used to Taurify used to have an office in New York City in Manhattan, and the one of the most expensive job markets in the world. There's not a chance in France I can hire top talent in New York. No way. It just wasn't going to happen.
Mm.
However, I can actually afford to pay for top talent, where the American dollar stretches a little farther. So, you are able to be a little bit more picky, if you will, on the person that you're hiring, and you're able to actually get rock stars because you can pay them a phenomenal wage, and that really helps. That actually helps to make a difference in their lives. Um, and that's something that would not make a difference in somebody's life living in New York City. So, I thought that was pretty cool as well. Kind of like real estate where you go to another market and you can buy a really nice house if the area is a little bit subpar. So I think that's kind of something to consider as well. But I think you are right. It is about the person. I think there's always going to be like somewhat of a little bit uncomfortableness depending on the area of like, hey, this person sounds different on the phone or whatever, but those are probably not the type of customers you want to work with anyways. So, um,
Yeah. And
yeah,
Americans are used to I feel like Americans are used to it, whether they want to be or not. Some people complain when they call customer service and it's someone from another country. But that's kind of how the way the world
yep,
shifted. And definitely like just the dollar amount alone, working with a firm like ours, we are
yep,
saving 20 to $40,000 a year on average compared to what that job would cost in the US.
yep. So let me just kind of dive into a little bit of the differences between like kind of what you guys do opposed to like somebody just going off on their own and finding their own VA. Like if I was, let's say I started Caleb's painting tomorrow and I needed, I was like, all right, I need somebody to call my leads, schedule appointments, all of that jazz. Um,
Mhm.
what exactly is kind of the difference between, me going out on my own and just, winging it or, hiring your firm to kind of do that?
Yeah, and I can even compare it to hiring other firms, other VA staffing firms.
Hmm.
So whether you're hiring a VA staffing firm or you're doing it yourself, you're basically getting handed a virtual assistant.
Yeah.
So you are responsible for creating that onboarding plan, for training them and managing them, for quality assuring them, for having the patience to teach them and work through the mistakes as they're learning the brand and the business. So that is a normally a big gap that we see is that business owners don't have, number one, the time and number two, the experience. They don't have the experience of creating onboarding programs and training materials and working with someone. They're really good at their trade. They're good at what they do,
Yeah.
but they're maybe not so good at training a team member to do what they do. So, yeah, if you end up finding someone on your own and you have the time to train them, it could work out and be a great scenario.
Yeah.
Typically, the number one issue is how do you find the right person?
Mhm.
I told you we have to usually source 800 people to find the rock star candidate. So
Yeah.
a lot of time and experience in the recruitment process that we follow.
Yeah.
And that's just come from years and years and years of doing recruitment and learning like how do we find the right person? What should we look for? What questions do we ask in the interview?
Mhm.
What skill sets do we test them on during the trial week? Like what assessments do we have them go through to weed people out? So
Yeah.
we've developed this process that's taken us years to build out. And now we kind of have refined that to be able to like source 800 people and hire a rockstar candidate within a 2 week period.
Yeah. Um, that is pretty quick, especially considering the time, the amount of people that you guys are kind of sorting through.
Mhm.
When I hired my first VA, which lasted probably like 2 weeks, um, I went on a couple different Facebook groups, posted some job applications, and then
Yeah.
just got b berated with, you know, 75 different applicants.
Mhm.
And then I took a guess, and then she stayed for 2 weeks, and then that didn't really work out. So, um, that was my experience of trying it on my own.
Yeah.
Um, now, to kind of talk a little bit more about timeline here, what is obviously it depends on what's going on, what exactly you're training them on. But like, if I know in my heart that I want to get, I need this in-house admin, I need somebody to be just full time in my painting company, doing all of that type of work. Realistically, what can I expect between like day one of working with you guys to like having that pretty much nine times out of 10 hands-off person?
Mhm. So the first 2 weeks, let's say we kick off on Monday. The first
Yeah.
2 weeks, you and I would work together to outline your processes. We spend probably around 3 2-hour sessions together. So a total of
Okay.
6 hours, sometimes more, sometimes less, just depending on how quickly we can get through everything. So while my team is recruiting in the background for that virtual assistant, you and I are working together to create the SOPs. On day 14, so like the first day of week 3, your VA starts and they go into training, onboarding. So typically by day 30, like they're already handling tasks for you. And then by month 2 of the VA being onboarded, I usually see them like picking things up and like being pretty autonomous by this point.
Yeah.
And then month 3 is just like still quality assuring things, but typically by the end of the 90-day period, they're fully operating. You're meeting with them on your own, probably around once a week,
Yeah.
depending on the frequency that you need, and they're handling the tasks that you've been giving them. I even see like our clients assigning new things, new projects, like new large responsibilities like
Yeah.
during the onboarding phase, which I don't like to recommend, but when VAs get the work quickly, like they can take on more quickly as well. So
Yeah.
depending on, yeah, the level of VA we're looking for, the job requirements that taught me during the onboarding, and then what comes up along the way.
Yeah. Understood. And I think as the business owner, some of you kind of watching, and I can speak to this because I'm trying to go through this myself as well right now. You have to transition if you're at a couple 100,000, want to get to a couple million, like you got to transition from being this super self-employed person to being an actual leader. And that's hard to do that and to, you feel like you know everything. You feel like you're the only one that can do it right, but like transitioning into actually trusting other people and properly training them on how to do this. I was just talking with one of my team members like 2 hours ago. I assigned her to a new client to manage, and then she's like, "Caleb, this is Google. You haven't trained me on this yet." And I was like, "Oh, we'll figure it out." But and like you really do got to take the time to properly train your team. And like I said this earlier, but I think I'll say it again. Like if you invest in your team, I think that they will invest back in you. But you kind of have to make that switch from being the one man show to to being the actual team leader there. So I know that this is the kind of the next question here is something that everybody's probably wondering. And I'm sure it depends. But is there kind of like a general idea like what something like this would cost? Like,
Mhm.
is it something that maybe a listener can afford or maybe not yet? Um, or are they like kind of different packages or does it, what does that all look like?
Yeah, we do have a few different packages, but our simply put, it's around $20 an hour.
Okay.
And that includes all of the training time, recruitment time, like my personal time managing the virtual assistant. So it's
Mhm.
just a flat rate. We don't bill separately for like the SOP development, training and management, things like that. So it's just a flat rate at $20 an hour. Typically, we're doing full time because we want
Mhm.
the businesses that we're typically working with need a full-time admin, and we prefer having someone that's completely dedicated to the company so they can really learn the brand, like live and breathe that business,
Understood.
and it's typically the most effective. So $20 an hour is the going rate, and you can definitely find, cheaper alternatives.
Yeah.
But we've had now multiple clients that have worked with other agencies that are cheaper or just have different business models, and then they come to us within a couple months saying it didn't work out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, just be careful when you're working with the VA. Like, make sure that they're vetted, make sure that you have the support from the agency of
Mhm.
the onboarding, the training, the management, because that is what we see. That's what we see is the missing piece, really, and the time that it takes to onboard and train that person.
Yeah. Okay. Understood. And I think that that's pretty affordable, especially considering like, I mean, $20 an hour, that's going to run you about 32 a month.
Mhm.
And realistically, it's probably going to be like 5 or 6 to hire somebody, full-time in-house, like if they were to go drive to your office or something like that.
Right.
So I definitely think it's affordable, and a good investment into your business here. Is there anything else that you think that we kind of glossed over or, maybe we didn't quite touch on that you think could be sort of valuable to people here?
I did want to add on the question from before that I also was in the same boat as a business owner. It was very hard for me to let go and delegate. And I felt like I could do everything best myself. And I didn't initially trust other people. So that is definitely something that as a business owner, you have to, a hurdle you have to get over. But once was able to let go, it really it propelled our business forward and it allowed me to free up my time to work on
Yeah.
things that were important for the business to grow, getting off the tools and,
Yeah.
working on the
Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, like, I've been in the same boat and I can definitely relate to that feeling. It is scary, but you can't grow the business if you're doing everything yourself. So we have to find ways. And that's also one of the benefits of working like with me is that I can help find ways to take your process and train someone.
Yeah.
So give me the challenge of training someone. Just show me how you do it and I'll make sure it gets done the right way.
And yeah, I think that, that point really needs to be hit home here. The last thing I want is for you guys listening to be stuck in this same spot for the next 25 years and then you become one of those bitter people all over the Facebook comments. I don't want that, okay? And I'm sure you don't want that as well. But that's what, 25 years of being stuck, and getting bitter because you feel like you're not moving anywhere. That's what that does to somebody. So, and I don't want that for you. I want you to have an enjoyable business and not a job that you're trapped in here. Um, so, if you want to take the next step on learning about hiring a VA, it sounds like we're going to be doing some sort of free consultations here. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I'd love to offer for your listeners a free consult, whether that will be, taking a look at their business and seeing what we can offload or just giving some general like operational administrative advice. I'd be happy to offer a free 30-minute consult for anyone that comes from your listener pool.
Awesome. And what would be the best place for them to kind of reach out there? Would that be the form on your website?
Yeah, the form on the site and then just referencing the Taurify pod and I'd be happy to honor that.
Awesome. So, guys, if you want to learn a little bit more about potentially having a VA join your team, Definitely consider Alexis. Her team is awesome, phenomenal company. I can tell just not only just by this conversation, but the ones we've had, previous to this, they really care. They're really diligent about making sure that they have a good product because they want to build lasting relationships that actually help people. So I'll leave a link below. If you're listening here, it'll be in the notes or description. You can go check that out so you can get that consultation to learn a little bit more about what that could potentially look like for you. So, Alexis, thank you very much for joining us here, and it was a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Caleb. Excited to meet some of your listeners and happy to share any other tips and tricks if you ever need me again.
All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next one.